Hello, Unravelers. Welcome back to Tiff Unraveled. If you're new here, I'm Tiff. Welcome. Thank you guys so much for taking just some time to stop by and hang out with me. This is my last video of 2025. I cannot even believe that the year has just completely flown by. It's been a blur and a whirlwind, and it's been up and it's been down, and it has been insane, as I'm sure it has been for many, if not all of you. This one is going to be a long one, and I just want to let you know right up front that that's not by accident. It's definitely a deep dive in the truest sense of the word. It's not a headline skim, really just me slowing down and zooming out and kind of laying everything that I could find on the table, because the trial starts next week, January 5th. If you guys follow upcoming trials, many of you probably already know which one I'm talking about, but I just felt like it was really important to find absolutely everything, talk about it, and really kind of get us ready for this trial. We are talking about the Sarah Grace Patrick case. I'm going to be following the trial. I know I will be working, but I am going to do my absolute best to listen, follow along, even if I have to catch up on, 2 times speed. I'll be taking a million notes because I'm really interested to see where this one goes. So I really just kind of wanted us to walk into that courtroom, timeline informed, grounded, and fully aware of how we got there. The evidence, the contradictions, the context, and the moments, that were probably going to end up mattering the most. So this episode is long because it's complicated. So grab a drink. It's, New Year's Eve. Well, by the time you're watching this, it's probably not. Grab a coffee or a snack, a yummy breakfast sandwich, maybe. Or whenever you're watching this, just grab whatever makes you, feel cozy and ready to dive in. It's definitely an episode that's meant to be sat with because, before the verdicts, before the sound bites, before the trial starts to unfold in real time, this is just us together making sure that we understand the full picture. So, for the very last time in 2025, let's unravel. On a very cold February morning, a 911 call shattered the very quiet Carroll County, Georgia. A teenage girl's voice reported an unthinkable discovery. Her mother and her stepfather had been found shot in their bed by the caller's 5-year-old sister. Found by the 5-year-old sister, obviously not shot by the 5-year-old sister. The caller was 17-year-old Sarah Grace Patrick. And within months, Sarah would transform from grieving daughter to accused individual. And it's a transformation that will play out not only in the courtroom, but it played out over social media platforms. It really started to raise some questions about truth and manipulation and the intersection of crime and digital culture in modern America. This is the story of the state of Georgia versus Sarah Grace Patrick. This is a case that has captivated the true crime audiences, legal analysts, and, casual observers alike. It's a case that forces us to confront some really uncomfortable questions. Can we ever really know what happens behind closed doors? What's behind all of the facades and all of the, outward appearances? I think we all, anyone watching this, anyone that's here with me, knows the answer to that question. No, we cannot. What drives a teenage girl to allegedly commit the ultimate betrayal? And In an age where everyone has or can have a platform, how do we distinguish genuine grief from calculated performance? As I said in the beginning of the video, this trial is set to begin on January 5th, literally less than a week away. And what unfolds in that Carroll County courtroom may provide some answers to those questions. So, of course, if we're talking about the case, we must first talk about Sarah Grace Patrick herself. This is a question that so far has been proven to be far more complex than it initially appeared. Because I say that because by all outward appearances, Sarah was a typical American teenage girl. She was navigating all of the complexities of high school life in Carrollton, Georgia. She was 17 years old at the time of her arrest in July of 2025. She was a student with no prior criminal history or record at all, history of violence. And in fact, by so many accounts, she was a young woman who was very deeply involved with her church community. During her bond hearing in August of 2025, character witnesses testified and they painted this picture of this exemplary young person. Her pastor testified. He said that Sarah had made a personal decision to be baptized. She continued to attend services regularly. And he described her as someone who didn't just show up on Sundays. She was actively engaged in her church. She was finding this place where she felt at home. Even from jail after her arrest, Sarah would call him to pray, and just tried to continue to maintain that spiritual connection during what I would definitely consider her darkest hours. Family friends also echoed these sentiments from her pastor. One supporter of Sarah's told the court that hurting someone simply isn't in her nature or character whatsoever, that she is incredibly kind, she is respectful, she is super patient. These were not casual acquaintances either that were, offering this support. These were people who claimed to know Sarah very well and who had had the opportunity to observe her behavior over a long period of time and genuinely believe in her innocence. But beneath this seemingly idyllic surface, there were complexities, there always are, that would later become very crucial to understanding this case. Sarah Grace Patrick lived in a blended family, a common enough situation in America. And it's something we hear about all the time. However, it can create its own set of unique tensions and challenges, especially for a teenage girl or boy. Her mother's name was Kristin Brock. She was 41 years old. She had remarried to a man named James Brock, who was 45 years old. And so, upon their marriage, it created a household that included Sarah, her much younger half-sister, who was only 5 years old at the time of these tragic events. And then Sarah's biological father remained in her life, and according actually to her maternal grandfather, his name is Dennis Nolan. Sarah had actually multiple times expressed a desire to live with him, her biological dad, describing him as more lenient than her mother and her stepfather. This detail, I know it is very seemingly minor, but it does raise some questions that I think haunt this case. Like, was there tension in the household? Did Sarah express that she was feeling constrained or controlled or unhappy in her home life? Or is it quite simply the normal adolescent desire for more freedom and now it's being kind of retrofitted after the fact, to this meaning? Dennis Nolan, maternal grandpa, Dennis Nolan, he has actually become Sarah's most vocal defender throughout this entire thing. He told Sarah that she was better off with Kristin and James, despite, her expressing her preferences. And so that acknowledgement does at least suggest that maybe Sarah wanted some more freedom. She wanted less control, but her grandfather tried to get her to recognize that her mother and stepfather provided the most stability, right? The structure and the guidance that she needed as a young girl. So one thing that makes this case a little bit unique, is Sarah's relationship with social media, right? And maybe even true crime culture. So, in the months following the passing of her parents, but before her arrest, Sarah allegedly reached out to multiple TikTok, true crime influencers, asking them to cover her parents' case. And screenshots were shared by a creator called Allegedly Reportedly, and they show messages from Sarah, who wrote to her, allegedly reportedly, search up Brock case. They're my parents, and out of nowhere, a random Thursday night in February, someone came in my house with me and my 5-year-old sister and shot my parents brutally, leaving them for me and my little sister to wake up to. And in another message, she wrote, I think it would be a really big hit. Okay, so the phrasing is, it's chilling, right? It's describing her parents unaliving as potential content, something that would be a really big hit. It would generate views and it would generate a lot of engagement. Here's where I feel like we do have to be a little bit careful. Let me also preface this episode by saying I'm not on one side of I'm not advocating for one side of the fence or the other. I'm simply putting out everything that I can find. And when I ask these questions, it's just because this stuff is going to come up in trial. And so me asking these questions is not me saying like, is she, no, I'm saying, think about, what's going to be, discussed. And, also they're insightful questions. And I'd love to hear from you guys, hear your thoughts on all of it. Just don't come for me and think that I'm like on one side or on the other side. I'm definitely waiting for all of the evidence to come out in this trial. But so the question I was going to ask before I realized some of you might come for me was, does this prove Sarah's guilt? I don't know what just happened to my voice there. I put some bass in it, I guess. Or does it reflect a teenage girl who is raised in the true age of social media? I mean, everything, I have 2 teenage daughters. Everything is like, we gotta post it. I mean, we get a freaking burger from Five Guys. We're posting it on social media, apparently. Like, everything is that to them. This is the digital age, the social media age. And that stuff includes tragedy. It does. You guys know this just as well as I do. I get some of my, like, oh, I haven't heard about this case. I get that from like TikTok. So it's like, is this a teenager who's processing that through the lens of a very digital culture? Like, that's just what her brain is saying is the normal thing to do. I don't know. Could it have even been like a misguided attempt to generate attention for an unsolved case? Or was it something very calculated and sinister? We have to ask ourselves these questions. Let me know. Sarah Grace was 17. Was she 16 or 17? Ooh, okay, I gotta fact check this. I'll do this in between segments. When I'm done here, I'm gonna 16 or 17 years old when these events occurred. I think 17. So the events occurred on February 20th, but she is being tried as an adult for these charges. So again, that raises a lot of very profound questions about like adolescent brain development, impulse control, criminal responsibility, neuroscience, right? The brain, like particularly the prefrontal cortex, right? That is the part of the brain that's responsible for decision making, understanding consequences of your actions. Actually, a lot of research has suggested that it doesn't finish developing until like the mid-20s. And again, I'm bringing this up because I feel like, and we'll get to it later, this is going to become something it's going to become a huge part of the defense, I think. So I think a question is that defense will most likely, definitely, probably be asking. I don't know, but in my brain, at 17 years old, right? She's at that very critical period where, of course, she has adult capabilities in many ways, but did she potentially lack the full capacity for judgment and foresight that we associate with like mature adults? It's not about knowing right from wrong. I'm 100% sure that she knows right from wrong. It's like, did she understand the ramifications of her actions? Or did she even understand, like, that? I feel that's not my opinion. I'm not saying that's my opinion. I'm just saying I feel like that is definitely going to be talked about in this trial for sure. And again, we'll get there. So, how much weight do we give to her age when we're talking about, evaluating these kinds of actions? That's all. Again, none of these are easy questions. None of them have easy or simple or straightforward answers. But I do feel like they're just essential to understanding what we'll likely hear during the trial. Yeah. Okay. How are we doing so far? We're settling in? All right. We have a ways to go. But we're gonna keep on moving because that's what we do. Okay. We're going to get to the events of February 20th. These events obviously would forever alter multiple lives and then set in motion this chain of events that obviously is continuing to unfold to this day. What we know about that morning comes from official statements, court documents, media reports, but there does remain um, a gap in public record. But what we know is this. It was a Thursday morning. This was in if I butcher the names of these, I'm so sorry. I'm bad at words. But it was in the community of Tyus, which is just outside of Carrollton, Georgia. Okay, so the Brock family lived on Tyus Carrollton Road in a home that, by all accounts, was their sanctuary. It was a place where they were raising their blended family. They were building their lives together. According to authorities, the couple's, Kristin and James, 5-year-old daughter made a horrifying discovery on that morning. Her parents, Kristin and James, were in their bed and they were unresponsive. The little girl, whose identity is obviously protected due to her age, found her mother and father with what would later be confirmed as fatal gunshot wounds. Pause. The gravity of that, the trauma that this 5-year-old girl experienced is incomprehensible. This is an age where children should be worried about kindergarten and playtime, play dates. But instead, this little girl discovered her parents passed away in their own home in a brutal way. Okay, so as James Brock's sister, her name is Kim Bowling, she would later say at Sarah's bond hearing, quote, "My 5-year-old niece then woke up to find her parents lifeless. The trauma this innocent child would carry for the rest of her life is unfathomable," unquote. Following the discovery, Sarah Grace Patrick called the 911 to report what had happened. So the actual recording of this call has not been made publicly available, not that I could find, but authorities did confirm that it was Sarah who contacted emergency services. I think that this detail is crucial for several reasons. First and foremost, it establishes Sarah's presence in the home at the time of the discovery. There's no dispute that she was there that morning, that she was made aware of what had happened. And obviously she took the steps to notify authorities. Second, the content and the tone of that 911 call, which we have not heard, could be significant evidence if it's played at trial. And I'm sure that it will be. Was she hysterical at the time of the call? Was she calm? Was she shocked? Was she saying things to set up? You know how, I mean, we've heard a million 911 calls. And you've heard guilty people set up a narrative from second one. So, and of course, the prosecution and the defense will very likely have very different interpretations of this call, whatever it reveals. When Carroll County Sheriff's deputies arrived at the Brock home, which was on the 1500 block of Tyus Carrollton Road, they found a scene that would very immediately, in their eyes, raise red flags. Kristin Brock and James Brock were found shot fatally in their bed. According to early reports, there were no apparent signs of forced entry into the home. One door, I think I read, had been left sort of ajar. I think this detail is also significant because it suggests that the person who was responsible for this either had a key, maybe that door that was left ajar was unlocked and an intruder made their way in, possibly, or someone who was already inside the home was involved. So, also, very critically, no firearm was found at the scene. No firearm. They immediately ruled out the possibility of any different scenario and immediately ruled this as a double homicide. Someone had brought a weapon into that home, taken the lives of two people while they slept, and had removed it from the home. The Carroll County Sheriff's Office spokesperson, her name is Ashley Halsey, she would later go on to describe the scene as just very horrific and very sad. So, establishing a precise timeline of the events of that morning, it is crucial, but a lot of details are still unclear in the public record. The investigation into their deaths began immediately. What we don't know publicly is like a specific time of the incident. We don't know the exact time of the 911 call. We don't know where Sarah was in the house when the shooting occurred. We don't know whether there were any witnesses. We don't know if there was anyone else in the home. We don't know. I don't think we know the specific type of firearm used. We don't know how many shots were fired. There is a lot that we don't know here, or not that I could find. I am a human being and I make mistakes. I did spend a lot of time here. I hope I got everything right. Feel free to call me out. Just don't come for me. Guys, be kind. I am a human being. Okay? But if you guys know anything that I don't know, or if I say something wrong, please tell me. I am absolutely 100% on board with making sure that I'm being as accurate as I can be. And I always think that I am being that. If something I say is wrong, it's never intentionally. Okay. So anyway, the gaps here in public knowledge, it's because it's an ongoing criminal case, right? But it also does leave us with a pretty incomplete picture of what really happened that morning. But again, trial is starting. And I feel like in opening statements, we're going to have that all laid out for us. But, and as I will always say and stand by, to understand the magnitude of a tragedy like this, we have to remember that at the very center of this case, I know Sarah Grace is at the forefront. She is not at the center. She is not at the heart. She is not at the core. Those two people are Kristin Brock and James Brock. Kristin Brock was 41 years old. She was a mother. She was a daughter. And by all accounts, she was a very devoted parent. Her father was the one that we talked about earlier, Dennis Nolan. He describes Kristin as someone who provided structure and guidance for Sarah, even when Sarah might have preferred more freedom. Kristin was raising two daughters at very two different stages of life, 16 and 5. In a blended family, and she was navigating all of that. That's very complex, right? You have like the step family dynamics, and all at the same time, she's trying to provide a loving and stable home. And then we have James Brock, and James was 45 years old. He had his own son named Tristan from a previous relationship. And he was a loving husband. He was a good dad by all accounts. His son, Tristan, would actually later describe James as, quote, my Superman. That is a testament to the bond that this father and son shared. He had taken the role of stepfather to Sarah, and that is a role that a lot of people are not able to step up to. I mean, that comes with a lot of very unique challenges. It requires a lot of patience. It requires a lot of understanding, and it requires a lot of commitment. And James did that willingly and lovingly as best he could. Both Kristin and James were very active in the church community, where Sarah also, like we talked about, actively participated. And they were just this loving couple who were trying to build a good life for their children and their family. Their passing left behind not just Sarah and her 5-year-old sister, but also Tristan Brock, James's son, and many extended family members who are still grappling with this incredibly tragic loss. The ripple effects of violence like this always extend far beyond the immediate victims. Things like this touch absolutely everyone in their orbit. Everyone. The investigation into what happened to Kristin Brock and James Brock would span nearly 5 months, from the February 20th discovery to the arrest of Sarah Grace Patrick on July 8th. During that time, investigators from multiple agencies would work together to piece together what happened in that Carroll County home. From the moment that deputies arrived on that scene, like I said, this case was immediately declared as a double homicide. The absence of the weapon, the lack of forced entry, and the sheer nature of the crime all pointed to a targeted incident rather than like some random act of violence. That's not what they thought this was. The Carroll County Sheriff's Office took over the lead on the investigation, but they did not work alone. According to official statements, the case involved the Carroll County Sheriff's Office, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation Crime Lab, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, and then some private forensic laboratories. The multi-agency approach in cases like this definitely indicate the complexity and the seriousness of this investigation. When local, state, and federal resources are all brought to bear on a case, it indicates both the gravity of the crime and the challenges that these investigators are facing in solving it. So I think perhaps the most significant statement made by investigators came from Carroll County Sheriff's Office spokesperson, again, Ashley Holsey, who said that investigators had discovered, quote, mountains of evidence connected to Sarah Grace Patrick's digital footprint. This phrase, digital footprint, it's my favorite thing. It's my favorite kind of evidence of all the evidences. Digital evidence is my favorite evidence. It's so hard to hide from your digital footprint. Almost impossible, really, nowadays. But I do think that in this case, it's very crucial to understanding how it was built. We live in the 21st century, guys. Our phones, our computers, our online activities, they all create a very detailed record of our lives. Whether you want them to or not, they do. Text messages, social media posts, internet searches. You know I love those Google searches. People's Google searches are crazy. My Google searches are crazy too, but that's because I do this. But like my Google searches are crazy. But out of this context, like people's Google searches are, I still just don't understand how people don't understand. But anyway, yeah, our Google searches, our location data, our app usage, all of these things can be recorded and analyzed by investigators. All of it. Everything. So again, while the specific evidence in this case has not been made public, we don't know exactly what we're about to hear. okay, which is again very typical in an ongoing case. But we can infer some of maybe what investigators might have found, right? Maybe they found communication records like text messages, social media messages, other communications before and after the incident occurred. Like, did Sarah communicate with anyone about her parents? Were there threats? Were there complaints? Were there discussions that she had with other people that could indicate motive or indicate planning on her part? Internet search history is another area that we know investigators are going to thoroughly examine. We know this. Was Sarah maybe searching in the days and weeks before February 20th? Investigators often look for searches related to weapons or methods or how to avoid detection, any other, possibly incriminating topics. We have cell phone location data, which can place someone at a specific location at a specific time. This, I feel like, could be very crucial in establishing Sarah's whereabouts before, during, and after what happened. Because if she was home, because remember, the weapon is missing. The weapon is missing. That weapon was removed from the home at some point. If we see Sarah's location data at home in the hours leading up to the event, at the time that maybe investigators or medical examiners believe the event occurred, and then leaving the home for some period of time and then returning sometime before the discovery. I mean, these are things to think about. Unless, of course, she left her cell phone behind, which some people have tried to do, leave their phone at home. So, of course, that's a possibility too. We're gonna see. We're gonna see. Sarah's alleged outreach to TikTok after the incident, after this occurred, it's already public knowledge, but what else was she posting? How was she presenting herself online? Was there a disconnect between her public grief and her private communications? And some would contend that those posts in and of themselves were strange, and again, we'll see all of these things in court. I'm certain. The fact that these investigators emphasize digital evidence, it really suggests to me that it's probably going to be the backbone of this case when it goes to trial next week. Again, we live in an era where physical evidence can be very limited or even contaminated, but digital evidence has become increasingly important in criminal prosecutions. Sometimes it is what seals the deal for guilty parties. So again, one of the most significant aspects of the case, I think, is what investigators haven't found, which is the weapon that was used to commit these crimes. Sarah's grandfather, Dennis Nolan, repeatedly points to this fact in his defense of his granddaughter. He says, quote, "It's all speculative stuff," unquote. He told that to Fox 5 Atlanta. He said, quote, "Nothing puts the weapon in her hand. They don't have it," unquote. This is a fair point, and defense will undoubtedly emphasize this at trial. I'm no expert. I mean, I try. Undoubtedly. Rest assured. Rest assured. Because without the weapon, prosecutors cannot positively and definitively prove that Sarah was the one who used it. They cannot show her fingerprints on a weapon. They cannot demonstrate how she purchased a weapon or how she possessed a weapon. They cannot tie it to her through any sort of ballistics or any sort of forensics. But the absence of a weapon does not necessarily mean innocence. Again, we know this. We've seen this. Consider the weapon could have been disposed of in a way that makes recovery impossible, right? It could have been thrown in a body of water. It could have been buried in some obscure. It could have been completely destroyed. Someone else could have removed the weapon from the scene. The weapon could have belonged to another person who was involved, maybe. Again, this is all speculation. This is all theory. None of this is fact. Well, this someone else being that's not fact. This is just me throwing out what maybe defense could use, again, as reasonable doubt. That's all they have to do. And like I said, circumstantial evidence, we've seen it 1,000 times, circumstantial evidence alone can still prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The prosecution will argue totality of evidence, right? They're going to say that all of this evidence together, probably particularly the digital stuff, is sufficient to prove Sarah's responsibility, even without having that physical weapon. So, but again, defense is definitely probably maybe going to argue that without it, there's reasonable doubt about who actually committed these acts. Period. So, another very striking aspect of this case is the timeline between the tragic events on February 20th and Sarah's arrest on July 8th, again, which is nearly 5 months, right? So, why did it take so long? Why? I know this is a question that investigators get very often, that the public asks very often, and I get it. We live in a society of like instant gratification. We want everything right now. We have a question, we want an answer, period. What's happening? What's going on? Tell us now. I'm with you. Complex investigations like this, they take time. I mean, even just the digital stuff on its own, right? We're extracting, we're analyzing, we're interpreting digital evidence. All of that requires investigators to they have to obtain warrants. They have to work with tech companies to access the data, and then they have to very carefully document absolutely everything for the court. Prosecutors want to be absolutely certain that they have sufficient evidence before even charging someone with such serious crimes. The standard is beyond a reasonable doubt. And beyond a reasonable doubt is going to require a thorough investigation. We want to get it right. We always want to get it right. Investigators very likely interviewed probably dozens of people, probably family members, friends, teachers, neighbors, the pastor. We know that all of these people had things to say, right? They want to make sure that they're able to paint a very complete picture of Sarah's life and Sarah's relationships. They're going to do that. That takes time. Lab work takes time, right? DNA analysis, ballistics testing, fingerprint analysis. All of these things require very careful scientific work that can't be rushed. These things take time. Look, given Sarah's age and the severity of these crimes, prosecutors definitely would have wanted to be especially careful to ensure that their case was strong and solid before proceeding with any of this. Nobody wakes up and says, we're going to charge a 17-year-old girl with the unaliving of her parents today. That's not something they come by lightly. It takes time. So just, I know not you guys. I know you guys listening all understand. But, the wheels of justice they turn very slowly. It's important, though, to take the time to get it right. So during these 5 months, Sarah was not in custody. She was out living her life. She was attending school. She was participating in her church community, all of her regular stuff. She was even doing that thing where she was reaching out to, social media, true crime creators or influencers. And this period of freedom before her arrest would actually become a point of contention, with prosecutors actually using that to demonstrate that she was a flight risk. When investigators believed that they finally had what was sufficient evidence, they obtained arrest warrants for Sarah Grace Patrick. Rather than conducting some dramatic media-filled arrest, they contacted Sarah and her father and let them know that the warrants had been issued. And that was when, on July 8th, 2025, Sarah Grace Patrick, accompanied by her father, turned herself in at the Carroll County Sheriff's Office. She was charged as an adult with 2 counts in connection to the unaliving of her mother and her stepfather, and also 2 counts of aggravated assault. The decision to charge her as an adult, despite only being 17 at the time of her arrest, only 16 at the time of these alleged acts, this is significant, right? In Georgia, as in many states, prosecutors have discretion to charge juveniles as adults. in connection with serious crimes. This decision, I think, reflects the severity of charges coupled with the prosecution's belief that the adult justice system is appropriate for this particular case. So, at the press conference announcing the charges, spokesperson Ashley Hulsey, she made a statement that captured the tragedy and the mystery of this crime. She said, "We don't know what goes through the mind of a child who wants to harm their parents. It's a very horrific and sad case." This acknowledgement, right, even with all of their evidence, everything that they had so far, which they felt was enough to arrest and charge this girl with a very serious crime, even with all of that, this statement leads me to believe that investigators still just couldn't fully understand the why behind what happened. And to me, that's just a really haunting part of this case. Why? Why? Even if Sarah is found responsible, right? Even if all of this evidence proves beyond a reasonable doubt what happened, we may never fully understand what drove a 17-year-old girl to commit, well, a 16-year-old girl to commit such an act. Importantly, also, authorities have stated that the investigation remains active and ongoing. Ashley Hulsey noted that it's very possible that others are involved as well. This statement raises some pretty intriguing questions, don't you think? Was Sarah acting alone? Do they think that she had help? Could there be additional charges coming against other individuals? Are there accomplices who have not been yet identified? Or is this simply just, standard language that investigators use to keep their eyes and their options open? So, again, as the case moves toward trial next week, we may learn much more about what investigators uncovered and whether additional arrests are forthcoming. Do you guys need to pause? Do you need to take a break? I need you to take care of yourselves. I told you it's a long one, but yeah, if you need to, just pause. Come back to me though. That's all I ask. Come back to me. Anyway, it wouldn't be a deep dive if I didn't talk about this aspect of the case, okay? What makes the Sarah Grace Patrick case particularly unique in the true crime conversations that have taken place? It's not just what happened on February 20th, but it's what happened in the months that followed, right? This is a months long, not a month, but months long performance of grief that played out across social media platforms that started to raise very disturbing questions about authenticity, about possible manipulation, and again, the intersection of tragedy with digital culture, okay? So we have to touch on that. This is a meaty part. So again, if you need to pause and take care of yourself, please do, but come back. So in the 5 months that we know between the passing of Sarah's parents and her arrest for this incident, Sarah Grace Patrick was extraordinarily alive on social media, particularly on TikTok. It seemed to be her platform of choice. She maintained an account on TikTok under the username at sgrace04282. Law enforcement has confirmed that this account did belong to the teenage girl. And what she posted during those months has actually become a very crucial part of the public investigation and the public discourse around this case. The first post mourning her parents came on March 1st, 2025, just over a week after everything took place. In this video post, which featured footage of her mother and stepfather before they were taken, the then 16-year-old Sarah allegedly wrote in a text overlay, "They don't know it, but a year from now, me and my 5-year-old sister would find them wrongfully shot in our home and won't get to watch me graduate high school, see me walk down the aisle, and couldn't even say goodbye." It's okay, I guess. She's memorializing a photo of her mother and her stepfather. I think that what a lot of people had taken issue with was like the phrasing, the future tense, as if it was looking back from a year ahead. It, and how that might create a narrative distance from what just happened. I mean, she said things in that post, like the word wrongfully, which suggests an injustice that took place, a crime that never should have happened. And then she lists, the litany of milestones, graduation, wedding, final goodbyes, right? It does paint a picture of a life that was interrupted, right? Of futures that were stolen from this girl and her parents. But I guess the question that a lot of people had, more so in hindsight, was this genuine grief or was this something else? That is the question that everybody is asking in regards to her online presence after the incident occurred. The posts continued with regularity throughout the spring of 2025. Many of the posts featured Sarah crying visibly. She was very emotional. She was lamenting her parents' absence. In some photos, she appeared genuinely distraught. She had tears streaming down her face. She talked a lot about missing them. In other posts, she would share photos and memories, creating those digital memories of the people that she had lost. One particularly significant post came on May 17th of 2025, which was less than 2 months before her arrest. This post, which Sarah captioned, "Should prob delete later," featured a photo collage including both the Brocks and her younger sister. And in text overlays, Sarah wrote, "If you asked me about my mom and stepdad, I'd say I miss them so much." The message would continue and it would say, "I feel so homesick and I miss them so much. I can't stand the fact I can't see them anymore. This sucks more than anything possible. I'm in a horror movie that never ends." And then she went on and then she said, "On top of everything, I still have no answers. I'm so confused on how someone could have done this and even more confused on why. Why them? Why that? Just why? How could they?" And she captioned this post, "Please send prayers for healing." Okay, I guess again, because people are looking at this post in hindsight, like after her arrest. So I guess we have to ask ourselves what this post would represent if Sarah was indeed responsible for what happened. It would be a performance of confusion and grief, asking questions to which she obviously would allegedly have already known the answers to. And so a lot of people feel like it was an appeal for sympathy and prayers while hiding the truth. And then I think a lot of people feel like that phrase at the beginning, "should prob delete later," maybe suggests that she had some awareness that the post might be problematic or that it might reveal too much or that it might come back to like haunt her. But devil's advocate, okay, don't come for me. I love you guys, but I'm just presenting both sides of this because, again, trial is coming. We're going to hear these things. Probably, definitely, maybe, probably. There's another interpretation, okay? Maybe these posts represent a genuine dissociation, right? A psychological splitting where Sarah somehow compartmentalized what happened so that she could get to a point where she could grieve while also being responsible. So, like, this is, by the way, I'm still on the the side of, allegedly being responsible for this and how she could post something like this, right? There's a dissociation, there's a split, right? Maybe like convincing herself that she means what she's saying, that kind of thing. If you get what I'm saying, could those posts reflect the very confused mental state of a teenager who had done something absolutely unthinkable and then was trying to process through it in the only lens that she knew how to do that, social media? Again, that's what teenagers right now know, live, breathe, social media. The posts of grief, though, they were also attempts to generate attention for the case, right? According to speculation. So we do know that Sarah sent messages to true crime influencers asking them to cover her parents' case, suggesting to them that it would be a really big hit, right? And so that does show sort of a calculated approach to publicity. Now, which side of that you land on? Was she trying to get publicity for her parents' case because it was still unsolved? Or was she marketing her tragedy? That's the two hands of the scale that we're on right now, as far as her social media presence is concerned here. Look, it's not uncommon for family members of victims to seek media attention for unsolved cases. That's not uncommon. It happens all the time. I guess what people take issue with is the way that Sarah went about it, like on TikTok, like through true crime influencers with an apparent understanding of what makes content go viral, and that's just based on her words of, like, this would be a really big hit. But again, is that just speaking to a generation of people who were raised on social media where everything is content, including tragedies? Carroll County Sheriff's Office spokesperson, we've mentioned her a lot here. I should find a picture of her and put it up here. I've said her name 10 times. Ashley, I hope I'm saying it right. Hulsey. I don't know if it's Hulsey or Hulsey? I don't know. Ashley Hulsey. She addressed Sarah's online presence, though, in an interview with News Nation, and her comments do reveal the investigators' skepticism about like about the authenticity of Sarah's grief and her presence portraying that grief online. Ashley said, when you want to post your life online, it becomes fair game. And so I feel like, was making it very clear at that point that Sarah's social media activity was very, very much a part of the investigation. Now, here's the thing. Here's the thing that everybody was talking about. This is actually when I first heard about this case, was this video. The most controversial piece of Sarah's public grieving, as far as I've seen thus far. And that video recording came from her parents' funeral, which took place at the Catalyst Church in Carrollton, Georgia, sometime in late February or early March. And at this funeral, Sarah delivered a eulogy that was recorded by a funeral guest and was later saved and then shared to James Brock's niece, and her name is Kristin. The video of this eulogy has become, like I said, sort of the big piece of evidence in the court of public opinion. We don't know if this is going to be evidence in the Carroll County court, but as far as public opinion, this one has been widely shared and widely commented on. In this video, Sarah wears a light blue dress. She approaches the podium. She appears emotional from the very start, and her voice immediately begins to catch as she starts to speak. Yeah, should we watch it? Let's watch it. We're going to watch it right now. Hold on. Wait, what? Okay. I don't know. I just don't see that. But okay. I'm trying to find it, guys. This is hard. Okay, hold on. Okay, I found it on TikTok. Let's just watch really quick. Here we go.
Those of you who do not know me, my name is Sarah, and I'm Kristin Brock's daughter and James Brock's stepdaughter. I just wanted to say goodbye to my mama and Jamie since we never got the chance to. I was so used to you guys always being here to the point that I never once thought to imagine y'all not being here. I didn't have a single clue how much I needed y'all until now. For James, thank you for all the life lessons you taught me and for being the best bonus dad ever. Your heart will finally be healed in heaven, and neither of y'all will be in any pain anymore. Although that gives me so much comfort, your fight was not supposed to end there. And for my mother, everything we went through does not define what kind of person or what kind of mother you were. You were a beautiful, kind soul with so much gratitude. And so, gosh, James, strong. I have to remember them for who they were and not what happened to them. And be happy for the time we got to spend together and not sad about the time that we don't. I may always and will always be her sunshine, but she will always be my star from up above. And I know at nighttime I can go and look at Mama and Jamie in the sky, and gladly they will save me a seat in heaven like they saved for you. I'm sorry. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Sarah.
Okay. That was it. So not long, I guess. Okay. So I was hearing about the I'm sorry part, but it seemed very sudden. And is it me? It seemed like she was just apologizing for breaking up, like for not being able to get her words out. I don't know. But I guess there's a lot to unpack there. People have been unpacking it. Let's see. Okay. So from what I'm reading, that one seemed to have been cut off, right? Because it seems like at the end, after that cut off, from what I'm reading, there was a section that was missing. If you guys have like a full one, that'd be great. I just couldn't find it. I had just searched really quick because I was mid recording. But apparently the last thing she said was after that first little I'm sorry, which I thought was her saying like I'm sorry, I can't really get my words out right now. But apparently after that she said, although there is nothing we can do to bring them back, we still have control over how we treat people with us today. And then she kind of concluded that by thanking her friends and her family for helping her get through her worst nightmare and ended with those two words again. I'm sorry. Okay. So I guess that's the I'm sorry. That second I'm sorry, that final I'm sorry is what people are struggling to come to terms with. Like now, to those in attendance, I did read a ton about this. To the people who were in attendance who believe Sarah was innocent, the eulogy was just this very heartbreaking expression of grief from a young woman who had just lost her parents in a horrific way. But apparently, there were already some in attendance that were suspecting that something was off with Sarah or that maybe she was involved in this incident in some way. And to those people watching her up there doing her eulogy, they said it was something else entirely. They said it was a performance, that it was her manipulating everyone, and that it was her attempt to establish her innocence through very public displays of emotion. So Kristin Dowda, who was James Brock's niece, we just mentioned her before, she was the one who saved and later shared that video. She made her feelings quite clear in a Facebook page that accompanied that footage. After their funeral, when I saw someone had recorded this, I immediately saved it because I knew one day everyone would get to see this for what it was. The feeling of being at a funeral to say goodbye to someone you loved and thinking to yourself, am I actually witnessing the person who ended them, standing up here in front of everyone and fake crying about them? Does anyone else see this person doing a crying voice but never shed a single tear? This is what a monster looks like. Monsters do come in the form of sweet looking girls in dresses sometimes. And luckily, in this case, the monster gets to trade her dress for a jumpsuit and handcuffs. So that was the Facebook post that Kristin Dowda made. In an interview that she did with Daily Mail, Dowda claimed that Sarah fake cried at the funeral. So Ashley Hulsey, again, she actually also referenced Sarah's eulogy in an interview with News Nation, expressing some doubt about Sarah's authenticity or, her expression of emotion. She said, I can't tell you if she had real tears. I wasn't there to see it in person, but it seemed odd. It was more like a speech. And at the end, she said, I'm sorry. Was that I'm sorry because I may have done this, or is it I'm sorry because I was upset during this eulogy? We may never know the answer to that, but that did stand out to me at the time. And again, that phrase, I'm sorry, it's definitely become one of the most analyzed and debated aspects of this entire case. What did Sarah mean when she said it? Was it an apology for being emotional during a eulogy? Was it an expression of sorrow for the loss? Or was it, as some suspect, a confession, a moment where that mask kind of slipped and the truth came through? Let me know down below. I know you guys have seen the video. Let me know what you think. What do you think of her eulogy? I I'm actually dying to know y'all's opinions on this. So, everything that Sarah did in those 5 months, right? Every post, every tear, every word can be interpreted. It really can be interpreted in two different ways, depending on which side of the fence you're sitting on. Whether you believe she is guilty or not guilty. If she's not guilty, then all of her social media posts and her eulogy simply represent this young teenage girl trying to process in the only way that her generation knows how, right? Which is through digital sharing or through like public showings and through seeking community and support online, right? I know a lot of people do that. Her outreach to those true crime influencers on TikTok maybe was a desperate attempt to generate the attention for her parents' unsolved case, right? And then if you look at it through that lens, her tears become a genuine expression of loss. If she's guilty, everything takes on a darker meaning. The social media posts become a very calculated attempt to establish an alibi of grief, to like create a public record, like a very seen record of her, supposed innocence. And the eulogy then becomes this performance, an actual performance that is designed to like deflect suspicion. And the outreach to the influencers would be seen that side of the fence as a way to control the entire narrative, right? When she said, I can give you some intel, but there's only so much I can tell you because that's what the cops told me. Like, I have to keep something. Like, is that her attempts? Like, I can tell you some things and you can put them out there. Was that her attempt to control the narrative completely and, to make sure that she framed herself as a victim rather than a perpetrator? And those tears, if they were real, if she actually shed any and they were real, on this side of the fence, those can be interpreted as tears of guilt or fear because she's probably feeling like people are closing in, rather than remorse or grief. So I don't know. The truth is, we may never know. I'm hoping we'll get much more perspective on all of this throughout the trial next week. We may never know for certain what was going through her mind during those 5 months. And even if she's convicted, even if she confesses, even if she pleads guilty the day of trial, which always happens to me before I cover a trial, but we will see. Even if that happens, we still may never fully understand the psychology of this kind of behavior, her behavior, Is this 16-year-old girl a master manipulator? Is she coldly calculating every post and every tear? Maybe. Maybe. Is she a traumatized teenager, who's like dissociating from reality and genuinely confused about her own role in what happened? Also, maybe. Did she not even do it at all? Maybe. What we do know is that this social media presence definitely has become a crucial part of this case. Again, I think prosecutors will very likely use it to establish consciousness of guilt, to show that she was trying to manipulate public opinion, garner sympathy, establish her innocence. And of course, the defense is going to see it in a complete opposite light. They're going to have to find a way to explain it, right? To contextualize it, to make it more consistent with innocence, which, like how we just talked about, on that side of the fence, those things could totally be interpreted that way. And then for those of us watching from the outside, her very digital trail of grief raises a lot of questions for us. I know, again, on both sides, about the nature of authenticity in the social media age in general. Like, how do we distinguish now between real emotion and performed emotion when absolutely everything that we see nowadays is filtered through some lens or some screen or some platform to maximize engagement? Like, how do we judge someone's guilt or innocence based on their online behavior when we know that social media encourages performance and exaggeration and very carefully curated presentations of self? So again, these questions go way beyond just this case. Trust me. I know we're on the same page there. I mean, we're not just talking, when we're talking about those things, it's not just here. Right. It speaks to much broader issues about how we live our lives online, how we process grief, how we process trauma in public spaces, and how we use those tools to connect us with other people, and how that can also be used as a tool to deceive and manipulate. Dang, the world we live in it's crazy. It's actually crazy. But so back on track. as this trial approaches, I definitely think the digital trail is going to be scrutinized by the prosecution. It's definitely going to be looked at twice by the jurors, and us as the public, we're all already, forming our own opinions. But during trial, I feel like every post is going to be analyzed. I feel like every word is going to be weighed. I feel like every tear is going to be questioned. And at the end of the day, there's going to be 12 jurors who will have to decide. Was Sarah Grace Patrick a grieving daughter, sharing her pain with the world and trying to find comfort and support and shine a light on an unsolved case of her own parents' murder? Or was she something far more sinister? Was she a young woman who allegedly ended her parents' lives and then performed grief for an audience of, at this point, millions? I don't know. Let's talk about the legal stuff. Hey Siri, can you tell me the temperature outside right now?
It's 34 degrees outside.
Thanks.
Sure thing.
She's way too happy about that. It's freaking cold. My heat is on and I'm cold. Got a blanket. Don't judge me. All right, we'll bear through it. Only because the blanket looks stupid. Anyway, Sarah Grace Patrick was initially charged with 2 counts in connection with the unaliving of her mother and her stepfather and 2 counts of aggravated assault. However, at her bond hearing, which I think took place on August 9th of this year, if I'm remembering, let me see. Yeah, August 9th. No. I'm tired. I'm missing a whole numeral. August 19th. 2025, right? At that time, it was revealed that she had been indicted by a grand jury on 8 charges total, including the original charges. So it's 2 counts of malice murder, 2 counts of felony murder, 2 counts of aggravated assault, and 2 weapons charges. So that's where we are right now. Wait, but I thought the weapon wasn't found. What weapons charges is she facing? I've been looking this up. Like okay, hold on. Okay. If you guys know, again, when I started my research on this case, no weapon had been found. Excuse me. No weapon had been found. That hasn't changed. Not that I can find. So if you guys know down below what the weapons charges are for, or if you have some insight into that, please let me know, because I'm genuinely curious and I'm really sorry that that's not insight that I could give you. I'm just confused on the weapons charges. Seriously, I need your help. Okay? Calling all unravelers. Activate. All right. Anyway, this at least is apparent to me. Like I said, if there's no public information known about this, the one thing that this does suggest to me is that prosecutors have definitely built a more comprehensive case than it's being reported on, obviously. But anyway, in Georgia, those charges are defined as the unlawful taking of another human being's life. So if convicted, Sarah could absolutely face life in prison. The aggravated assault charges likely relate to the use of a deadly weapon, like a firearm, in commission of the alleged crime. So on August 19th, Sarah Grace Patrick appeared in Carroll County Court for a bond hearing, and it would lay bare the divisions within her family and definitely provide the public with the first real glimpse of this case's emotional complexity. The courtroom was absolutely packed with family members, supporters of Sarah, and media, of course. And what unfolded over the next couple hours was a very stark illustration of how this entire tragedy has completely and utterly fractured a family into opposing camps. Sarah's defense team, they presented a series of character witnesses who, like we talked about in the very beginning, painted this picture of a young woman who posed absolutely no threat to society, according to them. Her pastor testified about her baptism, her regular church attendance, and her continued faith even while being incarcerated. And he described her as someone who had found her spiritual home in their congregation. And family friends, again, I'm just reiterating, spoke of her kindness, her respect, her patience. And people said that it just wasn't in her nature, it wasn't in her character to hurt anyone. Caitlin O'Keefe, who was a woman who had taken Sarah in after these events, but before her arrest, testified that Sarah was motivated to complete her homework by thinking of her deceased mother. As O'Keefe spoke, Sarah broke down in tears multiple times during that hearing. The defense argued that Sarah had absolutely no criminal history. She had very strong community ties. She would not be a flight risk if she was released on bond. They emphasized, her age, her youth. They emphasized her faith. They emphasized, the support system that she had who was ready to help her. Prosecutors, however, painted a very different picture during that hearing, and they argued that Sarah posed both a flight risk and a danger to witnesses. Now, Kim Bowling, who is James Brock's sister, delivered a very emotional testimony. She said, "If the defendant can take the lives of her own parents in such a manner, I fear for my own safety and the safety of my family and friends. I urge you to consider this in your decision," unquote. Tristan Brock, this is James's son and Sarah Grace Patrick, Sarah's stepbrother. And again, he very tearfully called his father my Superman. And he stated his belief that Sarah would absolutely attempt to flee rather than stand trial if given the opportunity. Prosecutors emphasized that Sarah's 5-year-old baby sister, well, she was 5 at the time, I guess she's 6 now, she's a key witness in this case, and that Sarah's release could actually create far too many opportunities for witness intimidation. Fair point. Video coverage of the hearing shows Sarah's very emotional journey throughout these proceedings. When she walked into the courtroom, she was smiling, she was hugging her attorneys, but as all of the testimony progressed, and again, particularly when Miss O'Keefe spoke about her mother, Sarah broke down repeatedly and just started weeping openly in court. But again, netizens have genuine questions about these kinds of displays of grief. And I think we all do when we're watching any trial, not just Sarah Grace Patrick's, right? Is this genuine grief that this person is portraying? Is it remorse that they're portraying? Or is it literally just a performance for the judge and the jury and the cameras? Can somebody who allegedly took her parents' lives still genuinely grieve for them? I'm not sure that I think those things are mutually exclusive. Okay, let's not get into that. That's going to make this episode like another half an hour longer. And we're already running long, babes. Thank you. By the way, also, I during my technical difficulties of this video, posted my last video of the year, which was like 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And I posted it at 11:59 and 45 seconds. I swear to God, I was literally at the last second because I felt like I just had to get something up and tell you guys how much I love and appreciate you. So yeah. Okay. All right. Anyway, focus. It's late, babe, but it is 1:25 a.m. at this point. So happy New Year. 2026 is going to be amazing for you. And it's going to be really great, I think, for this community also that we're building here, that you guys are helping me build. Okay. All right. Focus, Tiffany. Anyway, where was I? So after hearing both sides during this bond hearing, Judge Dustin Hightower, he denied bond. He did cite concerns about flight risk. He also cited concerns about witness intimidation. And he also He also made a very clear point about his intention to move this case forward very quickly. He said, "This is not daytime court TV, and this is not for entertainment. We're here to simply apply the law, and I'm going to do that to the best of my ability." I like him. I like him. He noted that Sarah would be held in solitary confinement due to her age, honestly, and the nature of her charges. And so that with those circumstances, it made this case a priority to the court. So he said she's in custody and she takes priority on my trial list. Following that bond hearing, Sarah's arraignment was scheduled for September 22nd, 2025. At this hearing, she formally entered her plea of not guilty on all charges. This plea was expected. I think the vast majority of defendants plead not guilty at arraignment. Definitely preserves their right to challenge all the evidence and to force the prosecution to prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt. I think one of the most significant developments in the pretrial phase of all of this has been the defense's pursuit. And I said earlier we would touch on this later. Well, now it's later. The defense is pursuing a neuropsychological evaluation for Sarah. So in August of 2025, Sarah was evaluated by a forensic neuropsychologist. So what this type of evaluation does is it assesses cognitive function, brain development, mental health, and any psychological factors that might be relevant to the case. So as of this month, the report that was written from this evaluation, right, is still pending. We don't have anything. Yeah. Okay. We don't have anything yet. Both the prosecution and the defense firmly believe that the contents of the report could significantly impact this case, but one believes it will do so for one reason and one believes it will do so for another. I'll leave that to you guys. You're all super smart. All right, we'll touch on it really quick. Obviously, so for the defense, the evaluation could provide evidence of mental health issues, developmental factors, or any cognitive impairments that may explain Sarah's behavior to mitigate her culpability in these crimes. For the prosecution, of course, they'll need time to review the report, and they may potentially hire their own expert to evaluate Sarah and you know, counter whatever the defense's expert is saying, to challenge the defense's findings. But it may also, they're also probably hoping that the report comes back and says the girl's all good. You know what I mean? There's nothing here that would indicate that she didn't know what she was doing. There's nothing here to indicate that she didn't understand the gravity of what she was doing or that she didn't understand the consequences of what she was doing. And that's not to say what she was doing as in the acts, but just what she was doing during that time period in general, Anyway, so Judge Hightower has indicated that the trial date of January 5th could be delayed, but I don't think it is. I haven't heard anything that would indicate anything other than going to trial next week. But he did say that it would depend on the contents of the report and whether the prosecution would need additional time to respond to it. So again, the report is very significant, especially given the age of Sarah at the time of these alleged acts. So there's a ton of questions. We kind of touched on it a little bit in the beginning, like about adolescent brain development or impulse control or any kind of mental health issues that could become very central to the defense's strategy here. It's definitely, we're going to wait and see. What I will say is that by everything that I'm reading, this trial is definitely expected to be very lengthy, very complex. A lot of digital evidence, a lot of expert testimony about forensics, testimony from a 6-year-old witness, which I just I can't get past that. And then character witnesses from both sides, prosecution and defense. And then, of course, the possible expert testimony about adolescent brain development. Very extensive cross examination of law enforcement and investigators. It's going to be something. This is going to be something. So I think that just about sums it up, Unravelers, as we watch this case unfold. And again, I will be covering this trial, not live. Obviously, you're not going to get a full 8-hour court day from me. God, that is the dream. Can I win 2026 manifestation lottery win so that I can stay home and watch trials live with you guys all day, every day? That's the dream. But I can't do that right now. So, what you can expect from me if you're interested at the end of the trial day, and I cannot promise anything. My job is taxing, exhausting, and I don't know if every day of the trial, while I will be listening every day and taking notes every day and making sure that I give you guys the tea every day on paper, I cannot promise, just because I don't want you guys to be disappointed in me, that I will be able to come home from work every single day and do, dinner and kids. I also homeschool my high schooler. Like, I'm going to, if not every day, every other day. Goal? I mean, this is the time of resolution, right? Resolution every day. I will post a summary of all of the key points throughout the trial that day. And so, again, if any of you are interested in that because you also worked a long day and you can't come home and watch the whole 8-hour trial, join me, hang out with me, have a glass of wine with me, have a plate of spaghetti with me. I don't know, whatever you guys do for dinner on a weeknight. And we'll just go through, we'll hit the high points, we'll hit the details, we'll hit the significant parts of the trial. No fluff, no fuss. We're just going to get to what we heard and to what mattered. That is my goal for this trial. So as we get to that point, let us do so. When we enter that courtroom, let us enter that courtroom with empathy. Let us enter that courtroom with critical thinking. Put your critical thinking caps on, babes. It's so important. And let us walk into that courtroom with a commitment to understanding the full complexity of what happened. Let us remember that behind all of these stories, all of these headlines, all of these statistics, all of these court filings, there are so many real people that are going to be in this courtroom who are going to be experiencing real pain. So let us also hope that the outcome, whatever outcome that may be, can provide some measure of closure and some measure of healing to absolutely everyone who is affected. Because remember, like I said, cases like these affect absolutely everyone in their orbit. If you want more extensive information on the case, Court TV obviously has provided very comprehensive coverage on their website. Fox 5 Atlanta, they do all of the local reporting on this case. And then I think 11 Alive is going to offer the trial coverage as well. Listen, man, I'm exhausted after these. Okay, I guess what I want to say is that cases like this one, cases like Sarah Grace Patrick's, when we talk about these things, it's like, wait a minute, yeah. These conversations do matter. Even though they're hard to talk about, they matter. Because, again, they ripple far beyond any courtroom, and they shape how we talk about things like responsibility, accountability, and honestly, most importantly, the very real human cost behind America's justice system. Kristin and James deserve justice, real justice, true justice, okay? And I hope that we're going to get that. But outside of like what we're talking about, it's also about what we learn throughout. Like, I feel like every trial that I watch, I honestly feel like every video that I do, everything I put out, even with my like, silly historical sort of gossipy true crime FaceTimes that I do on the channel, which by the way, I really do just do those to break up the heaviness of the channel. But even with those, I'm constantly learning something new. I'm learning about what we can notice sooner. Next time, I'm learning about how we can show up for each other when the story is uncomfortable and even when the story is unresolved. Yeah. All right. I know I know you're tired. Me too. I know you're tired. But listen, before I go, please just stay with me and let me say thank you. Thank you. Listen, I remember hitting 50 subscribers and being over the moon and thinking like, oh my God, there's 50 people in this space that want to listen to me yap and cry on camera and, talk about these victims and their stories and cover these trials and gossip about, arsenic rings in the 1600s. Like there's there's people who are listening to me. And then in the last 6 months, and I've only been on this space for 8 of those. In the last 6 months, I don't know, you guys have just shown up for me. And the channel grew a lot, at least in my eyes, from my perspective. It grew so much. And that growth is because of your support. It's because of your thoughtfulness. It's because of your engagement. It's because of your willingness to sit alongside me with all of these incredibly difficult and hard cases. And I really just hope to see this space and this community grow to something even bigger and something that's rooted, because these are my core. This is at my core, guys. Something that's rooted in compassion, something that's rooted in curiosity, keep asking questions, and something that's rooted in respect. And the respect goes not just for the people of the cases that we're talking about, before each other when we're talking about these things. And it's making sure that we're holding space and respecting people who are on both sides or maybe even the middle, and just making sure that this is a safe space for absolutely everybody, no matter what you're thinking, throughout these cases, throughout these trials, throughout, this is a safe space. We can talk, we can love each other, we can respect each other. And I'm really looking forward to growing that. If you found any value whatsoever in this video, please do me a favor and just consider liking it, consider sharing it. We do want to talk about this trial with absolutely everyone we can. It starts next week. Hype it up, because I learned I have that button now. I'm not entirely sure what it does, but you can press it. I'm sure it's not bad. Hype it up. That doesn't sound bad. You can do that if you want. If you don't want to, it's totally fine also. And also, one more button, hit the bell. And I only say that so that you don't miss, I don't know, whatever comes next, which in the near future is just going to be all the trial updates for Sarah Grace Patrick. Anyway, okay, most of all, I guess, it's a new year. I'm being sentimental. Bear with me. I'm almost done, okay? Most of all, I want you guys to leave here today, tonight, whenever you're watching this, knowing how appreciated you are. I want you to know that you are the reason that this space exists. I have I very early on was ready to give up many times. You guys are the reason that these stories continue to be told. And I try my best to tell them with care, to tell them with accuracy, but to also tell them with empathy, care. And then comes evidence, and then comes the truth. So, without you guys being here with me, none of what I'm trying to build would even be possible. Period. I'm going to stop rambling. Go to bed. What are you still doing up? It's 2:31 in the morning. Happy New Year. Happy 2026. Cheers to you, my unravelers. I love you guys so, so much. Until I see you again, please stay safe. Keep asking questions and keep unraveling. Love you.